I don't hang out in art studios anymore. I hang out in tissue culture labs. You know, it's like, it's so weird, you know? For the past 6 years, I've been working mostly with honeybees, exploring the kind of ancient relationship which has existed between humans and honeybees. Hivecubator 2.0 is a sculptural incubator for taking care of tissues that are growing in vitro. So in a laboratory, you'll have an incubator that'll produce heat and CO2. And in this instance, I'm adapting a beehive to supply the heat and CO2 necessary to care for tissues growing in a dish. A beehive is a superorganism. And so the way that I think of a hive is really as a body, something actually closer to a snail or a hermit crab. You have the living organism and then a shell. In this instance, the bees are the organism and the beehive is the shell. As a superorganism, it eats, it breathes, so it'll give off heat and it'll give off CO2. All I'm doing is essentially, I hate to say it, exploiting the kind of body-like qualities of the hive to create the conditions for taking care of tissue. This is the worst view I've ever seen from a tissue culture lab. It's horrible. The work is being supported by the Center for Stem Cells and Regenerative Medicine at King's College in London. There'll be mammalian tissue growing inside of the Hivecubator, and they'll be responsible for taking care of it and feeding it and making sure that the cells are happy.
Cells just need 3 basic things to stay alive. They need nutrients, they need heat, and they need moisture. Normally in the lab, we grow these cells in a machine, in an incubator that controls everything from the oxygen and the carbon dioxide, as well as the moisture levels. So it's a really cool, interesting project in that we need to see if we can grow these cells out of that context.
There'll be a tube which connects the hive to a window to let the bees in and out of the building, essentially making the gallery permeable to honeybees, which will let them go out and still find food and different things that they'll need to take care of the hive.
I'm going to plant a crocus bulb to provide some early food for the bees so that when things warm up, they have some pollen to feed the young so that the hive can grow big and strong and make it through the next season.
If something dies in the gallery, for instance, the cells or maybe even some of the bees, it's not necessarily a failure. It just points to the complexities and fragility of life as it really is. So I think as an artist, you're always having to reevaluate that dynamic. You're always having to ask, you know, is it okay that things die? Is it okay that things don't last forever in the way that other artworks do? And so I think so-called biological arts, I think, are really asking that question about what does it mean to shift that dynamic of a work that isn't necessarily going to live or exist forever. When you consider that 1 in 3 bites of food comes as a result of honeybee pollination, they're very important. But I think what we have done is created a food system that is very brittle. We have created a food system that is dependent pretty much on a single pollinator. And we have, unfortunately, because of our own biases, we have ignored the many other species which help in pollination and support a food system. So I think honeybees are essential to our survival, but I think they're just one element in a much broader landscape of species that we need to be taking care of.